Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of a Shabbat teaching by Rabbi Cantor Chorny.
So get comfortable for a minute. Yishar Koach, thank you for leading us, Alan. And it's good to see everybody's faces so I can see. Welcome if you're joining us on YouTube. If you had an opportunity to print out the learning sheet that I sent, then you're welcome to pull it up right now. I'll share with you again that the source within the course of this coming week's Parshat Shoftim, can be found in the Eitz Chaim Chumash on page 1092. If you're looking in any Hebrew Bible, we're in Deuteronomy and Devarim, the 17th chapter, and we're going to be looking at verse 18, particularly. And we only have a few minutes to study this together, really. We're just going to look at it for a few minutes. I want us to come to an understanding about what it means to have a copy of the Torah for a king. This doesn't seem so absurd, and I'll just start from the place of saying that we know, even to this day, that it actually is a sign of grandeur for some people, particularly people of means and wealth in certain communities, particularly for people of power in certain communities, to have a copy of a Torah, right? You all know somebody in our community or someone in a community that you've lived in who's had a copy of a Torah scroll, right? And I think that that's actually an analog to what we're talking about here, because this isn't a time in which someone could have just printed an Eitz Chaim Chumash. That would have been quite the scribal undertaking to actually have a copy of a Torah scroll. So I think that the analog exists, and we can imagine what it means for somebody to have a copy of the Torah. The question, though, and the question for certain for the two commentators who we're going to look at, really three, because Rashi's drawing on a rabbinic conversation in Talmud and Sanhedrin, which I brought on the page here, and then this other commentary by the Kitab Sofer. Their conversation is why. Because the Torah thinks it's very important, meaning the Torah text itself thinks it's very important that if we should have a king appointed over us, that the king has a copy of the Torah. So in order to know why, we have to know what it means that a king has a copy of a Torah scroll. And there's a debate as to what it means. And actually the debate is between Rashi as he brings the Sanhedrin, and Onkelos. And Onkelos, as a translator into the Aramaic, kind of takes the basic, clear, plain, shot meaning. And Rashi takes a different take. So let's look at the verse first. V'haya cheshivto al kisei mamlachto. When he's seated on his royal throne, plain meaning. Let's not go too literal. Plain, not literal meaning. V'chatav lo et mishnei haTorah hazot. They should write for, it should be written for him, they should write for him a copy, a Mishnah Torah, probably a familiar phrase, title of a bunch of books, al hasefer, milifnei hakohanim haleviim. It should be done before him, by this class of the priests. Okay. So what does Rashi say here? Et mishnei haTorah. A Mishnah Torah. That is to say, Rashi immediately goes to, they're talking about two scrolls of the Torah. Okay? They're talking about he should have two copies of it. Hang on. Skip to the end of the commentary, right? Skip to the end where it says Onkelos, however, because you probably would have thought this at first. You probably would have thought along the lines of what Onkelos said. Now, Onkelos says the following. When Onkelos translates this to Aramaic, we get, however, he renders Mishneh by pot shegen. Where do we know the word pot shegen from? I bet you know this word. I bet Marshall Kramer knows this word. Where is that from? You can even unmute and tell us.
Okay, well, it's from the Megillah itself.
Great. And what does it mean in the Megillah? Do you remember?
That I don't remember, no.
So it's actually the source in the Megillah of our doing that weird thing you see on Purim where we fold the scroll funny. Uh-huh. You know, up on the bima, you might have noticed that folks who read from the Megillah scroll do this funky folding situation because of this idea that it was this Patshegen. It was kind of this pamphlet that was sent out to the people. And in a meta sense, we're representing that this Patshegen was sent out. This letter, this edict kind of was sent out, right? Like this copy was written. But you're 100% right. That's exactly where we know this word from, this Patshegen. And so Unklo says he was supposed to have a copy, a Patshegen, exactly. So he interpreted the word Mishnah in the sense of basically a repetition and an uttering, right? So a Mishnah Torah, he's supposed to have a copy, a repetition of the Torah with him. Back up though. Rashi thinks it's something different. He's supposed to have 2 scrolls with him. And I brought you the Sanhedrin, but we're not going to go deeply into it. I just wanted you to see the original, the OG Sanhedrin. It's right beneath it too, in case you want to go into it. But look at Rashi's summary of it. 2 scrolls of the law. 1 that's placed in his Beit Genazav, in his, sounds like a Geniza, right? Because that's what it means. Same thing. It's placed in his treasury. And the other that goes out and comes in with him. Okay? In this nice summary, it says, like a travel-sized one. Does that make sense? Right? I mean, it kind of does. I like it. I like that read of it too. And I think they read it for 2 reasons. I get that the Sanhedrin read of it for 2 reasons. I think they read it literally because Mishneh means a duplication, right? So not just a teaching, but it could mean a duplication. And also, I think v'haya cheshivto. And it should be that when he's seated on his throne, he should have a copy, which should mean when he's not seated on his throne, he should also have a copy. I would think. That's very rabbinic, right? I think that's what they're saying in this argumentation. Okay. So I want to look at this Hungarian commentary, which really moves me. It's the last source that I brought on the page. It comes from my teacher, Rabbi Daniel Goldfarb, whom I love and miss, and who was one of my first teachers at the conservative yeshiva when he was teaching there in 2007 when I first studied there, which now feels like, I guess this is my bat mitzvah year away from there. It was an amazing experience learning from him. And he has this little vort where he teaches all of that background on this particular piece of Torah. And then he teaches the Katav Sofer. So he says, Binyamin Shriver, who is the Katav Sofer, was the Katav Sofer, he's a mid-19th century Hungarian commentator. He says, every king or leader rabbi should have 2 Sifrei Torah. Okay, he agrees with this Sanhedrin Rashi take on it. And he says he should have one that's for home, for himself, in which he should observe every mitzvah with very strict precision. So when he's sitting on his throne, he should observe it, bishirut, and also very midaktik, very carefully. And the other one he should take with him when he goes out on the road to the people, with which he should be lifnim mishurat hadin. He should show more latitude, and he should teach them more according to the spirit of the law.
Why should the king have one?
Why should what?
The king. Why should the king have 2 Sefer Torahs? Why? I mean, is he a secular king or a religious king?
No, this is the king. This is the king of the Israelites they've appointed. They have appointed
Okay.
They've appointed a king, and now they've appointed a king, and the king should have these 2 Sifrei Torah with him.
Oh.
And he should have a Sefer Torah with him on his throne, and he should have a Sefer Torah when he goes to the people.
Okay.
And when he goes out to the people, this is the Torah for himself, and this is the Torah and this is the Torah for the people. And so the way that he's reading it is to say, it's not about him literally having 2 separate Sifrei Torah written. He's saying, when you go to read the rule book, and you're the king, and you're the one with power, and you're the one with influence, and you're the one who gets to have the final say. You're the one who has to treat this Torah with the ultimate care and you got to be strict with yourself.
Right.
But when you go out there and you bring the Torah to the people, you should know that they're out there and they're living beyond the throne room. And that in the context of the Torah, where we are in the Torah right now, in the context of all of the rules that the king is being given about how he should care for the people, who you should choose, what kind of character he ought to have, what he should go out there and rule as, the Kitab Sofer says, listen, he should go and he should approach the people, and he should approach them with latitude and with stretchiness, and understand that he should give some give when it comes to offering Torah out to the people. With himself, he should be careful. All right, I'm going to give Gary a word before I close this because he looks very excited. Gary.
Very exciting. The quick question, it says a copy of the Torah. So this is the kosher Torah? Because a copy could have been, it doesn't have to be, if it has one error, it can't be a kosher Torah. I just didn't know. Clearly the words were there, but was it halakhically the scribe would do everything perfect, or didn't make that much, wasn't that crucial?
Right. So I think that Onkelos thinks maybe, and I think that Rashi thinks definitely, and I think the Kitab Sofer, in answer to your question, and I think the Kitab Sofer says, we're not talking about scrolls. Okay? You hear what I'm saying? Right? Like Rashi and Onkelos, remember Rashi's 11th century, Onkelos I didn't write it down. Anybody know off the top of your head? A lot longer ago. But I'm not fast enough on my feet. But the Kitab Sofer in the 19th century, he says, we're not talking about scrolls. Right? We're talking about when you look at the Torah and you give Torah, not a Torah, but give Torah, when you're dealing the Torah to the people, right? He says, that's what it means. You should have a copy of the Torah, right? 2 Torahs. He says, this is a drash. You should understand that you should be kinder and give more latitude when it comes to reading the Torah out to the people. But with yourself,
Is the strict interpretation of Deuteronomy 17:18, does it actually say 2 scrolls? Does that term et mishneh mean 2 scrolls in Hebrew, or is it 1 scroll? See, I think that last one you read from the 19th century makes more sense, except because it really doesn't really say 2 scrolls. It just says 1 scroll. It's 2 uses.
I think at Mishneh HaTorah, I think it literally means a copy of the Torah. He should have a copy of it. He should have it might even mean, it might and even likely meant, I don't know, I can't say for sure, a reciter, like to accompany him from among the priests who could recite the Torah constantly because the oral tradition was so strong in that time. That could have been the case. I don't know. I'm not a scholar to know for certain what the true and likely pshat would have been.
Well, the 19th century guy makes more sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
I like what he has to say. And I think it's a great teaching for us in our time, which is to say that if there is a rule book that we are living by and we are in a position of power, and maybe I'll leave you with this so that we can dive in a little Mari before we close. If there is a rule book by which we are trying to live, whether it is a Torah or whether it's some sort of a personnel handbook and we're in the position to be that powerful person and there is someone else who is the person we're in the position to supervise, for example, right? That when we're the person in the position of power to wield that book, right? We are closest to that source, that there is tremendous wisdom in asking ourselves to hold ourselves more strictly to those rules and to give the people over whom we have oversight even more latitude. That we hold ourselves to high standards, to be exemplars, to hold ourselves close to that source, and that as we have power to wield that book and all the rules and the consequences within it, that we offer latitude out to the people over whom we might execute some power.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.